Good evening, and welcome back to Tales That Terrify on SL Tonight. This is the Series 2 finale, The Iron Gates by Margaret Millar. We are still here at our feline friends, and remember, we have kitty cats galore. Just come on down. We have fishing, and even a campground that we may visit the next time we're here for our next part, which we get to part 3 now. At last leaving our wife at the house, she had disappeared, vanished. Housekeeper's coat and money also vanished. All of her things still remain. They feel she has run away. So they contact the police. The police are made up of an incompetent boob who drinks, and another one who's too good for his job. Let us see if they can find their woman. Chapter 5. On Tuesday, Edith quarreled with nearly everyone in the house. She began with Andrew, who told her at breakfast time that he was going to report Lucille's disappearance to the police. Edith raged and wept. It was too humiliating. It was too shameful. How would they ever hold their heads up again? Andrew had left without even bothering to argue. Frustrated, Edith turned her anger on Martin. How could Martin go to the office when they needed him? He must stay home. It was his duty. Directly after breakfast, Martin, too, left the house. The most violent quarrel was in the evening. Edith was in the living room with Polly and Giles. She suggested that the wedding be postponed. Polly gave her a long, hard stare. What for? It wouldn't look right if you were married at a time like this. It wouldn't look right to whom? Polly said. You? Lucille? People will talk. People always do. This is Giles' last furlough before he goes overseas. I know, Edith said tragically. I know, it's a terrible thing to have it spoiled like this, but couldn't you wait just a few days? Perhaps Lucille would be back then. I don't care a damn about Lucille, Polly said. I never have. The only way I've been able to live in the same house with her was to ignore her, not to let her spoil things for me. Well, she's not going to spoil them now. Giles tried not to listen to the two women. He looked down at his hands, hardly recognizing them as his own, as he felt so unreal and formless. He seemed to be moving through a nightmare, without the power to wake up and without the strength to protect himself against the dim shapes of danger. Sometimes the house was like a box, and he was alone in it. And on the ceiling of the box there were shadows without cause, and the walls moved slightly in and out, as if the box were breathing. Sometimes he stopped to listen to it, and he heard his own breathing. Surely it must be his own, but it sounded as if someone were breathing along with him in rhythm that wasn't quite perfect. When he went into a room, it always seemed that someone had just left it. The air was stirring and the door was quivering. She has been very good to you, Edith was saying shrilly. You shouldn't talk like that about her in front of Giles. I talk the way I want to. I don't fake things. Nobody listens to me in this house. I won't have it. I forbid you to be married until we find out about Lucille. I don't need permission, Polly said. She turned her back, but Edith's voice pawed at her ears. What do you know about Giles? What do you know about it? I guess there isn't much to know, Giles said, and attempted to smile. I mean, I realize how queer it looks that Miss Morrow should disappear the day after I arrived, but I assure you. You must be crazy, Edith, Polly said in a cold, flat voice. It's bad enough that Giles should have to be here at such a time without being accused by you. She said he reminded her of someone, Edith cried, flinging herself violently into this new idea. You can't tell about people. You can't believe anyone. You can't trust. Her voice snapped. She turned abruptly and ran out of the room, the sleeves of her dress fluttering. She looked like a great flapping bird with broken wings. Giles, yes, let's get out of here. Now, tonight. Can we? No one can stop us. We'll just leave. Giles, go up and pack. We can go to a hotel. Alright. The ceiling of the box seemed to open, and clear, cool air rushed in. Alright, we'll just leave. Oh, Giles. The telephone in the hall began to ring. "It surely looks like her," said Miss Betty Flack. "It surely does, but I can't be sure. I mean, if it's important, with the police in it and all, then I can't be sure." Miss Flack handed back the photographs and added thoughtfully, "But it surely looks like her." Over Miss Flack's platinum curls, Bascom and Sands exchanged glances. "What I mean is," said Miss Flack with an elegant gesture, "I think it's her all right. She came in just when I was closing the shop up and wanted to know if I did hair cutting. Well, naturally I do, though my real specialty is cold waves." "You cut her hair," Sam said, gently guiding Miss Flack's mind back from the cold waves. "I gave her a feather cut. Did you see, for when the bell tolls? Well, like that. The girl in it, I mean. Miss Smith, she said it was her name. She didn't seem to care how I cut it. She just sat there holding her purse. I noticed her shoes were wet, and I like to make a little joke now and then with my customers, so I asked her, laughing like, if she's been in swimming down at the lake. She didn't think it was funny," Miss Black said, adding fairly, "Maybe it wasn't." "Did she say anything at all?" Sands asked. "Just about how cold it was. I surely felt sorry for her with such a flimsy little coat on. She was such a lady, if you know what I mean, and so sort of desperate looking. I thought to myself at the time, maybe her husband drinks or something." Miss Black had another of her thoughtful pauses. "He certainly looked as if he drank." "Oh," Sands said, and Bascom's hands twitched as if they wanted to get around Miss Black's throat and choke something out of her. "Her husband came with her?" "Not exactly. I mean, I don't know if he came with her, but when she went out, I stood at the door getting a breath of fresh air and saw this man waiting across the street. Miss Smith stopped and talked to him for a minute, and then she walked ahead and he followed her. I remember thinking to myself at the time, isn't it a caution that women marry sometimes? She was so tall and handsome, and he was just a little fellow." "A little fellow," Sam said, and he thought back 16 years to the last time he'd seen Andrew Morrow. Morrow was about 6'3". Even making allowances for the fact that the light had been dim and Miss Black's memory was out of vague and romantic order, Sands was sure that the man Miss Morrow met across the street had not been her husband. It was easy enough to check. Sands asked Miss Black for a telephone, and while he was sitting in the booth looking in the directory for Morrow's number, he heard Miss Black tell Bascom that she herself was single, had a half interest in the beauty parlor, and liked great big men. Sands died. The door into the hall was still open, and Polly and Giles heard Delia answer the phone, and then trot down the hall. A minute later, Andrew came to the phone. They heard him say, "Hello? Yes, this is Dr. Morrow." "Well," Polly said sharply, "do we listen or do we talk? Or do you go up and pat?" "I will if you want me to." "If?" Polly said bitterly. "Oh, well, nothing like a telephone ring for breaking up moods, is there, Giles?" She clenched her hands and began to swear in an undertone. "Damn, damn, damn, damn!" Andrew's voice crept into the room. "Sands? No, I'm sorry, I don't think I do remember, Sands." A pause, a change of tone. Oh yes, he cleared his throat. I'm very glad you were able to get that far." "Sunnyside? No, I was at home. The maids are frightened and called me home from the office. Will you hold the line, please?" Gray-lipped, he came to the door of the living room and shut it without saying anything. "It's the police." "It's the police," Giles said. "I suppose they found out something. Polly, what's the matter?" Her shoulders were shaking, and a film had spread over her eyes like ice over a river. "Giles, it's that man. It's that same one, Sands. He came with a lot of men, and I could see them from my window going over the snow. Parts of it were like red slush." "I don't understand." "One of them, Sands, came in the house and sat over there, in that chair. He just sat and looked at us, at Martin and me, for a long time. Martin kept laughing. I don't know why, but he kept on laughing and laughing." She rose unsteadily and walked across the room and stood in front of Mildred's portrait. For a minute, the implacable brown eyes stared into the mild and vacuous blue eyes. Giles looked after her, puzzled. "Who is that?" "My mother." "Oh." She was quite young when she died. Polly turned around. Her face was hard and merciless. Probably just as well. She was the type who had to have run to fat. Dallas didn't want to look at her. He was always a little frightened of her. In their relationship, it was Polly who was the realist, he the dreamer, she the leader, he the follower. I'd better go up and tell Martin, she said. He'll want to know. Do you still want to leave, or do you want me to go up and pack? What? She said, as if she'd forgotten about it. Had even forgotten about him, who he was, and why he was there. I'll have to tell Martin. It was in the winter, Sam said. For a couple months there had been stories of children being chased in the park on their way home from school. The stories were vague and nobody ever arrested. Then one night Mildred Morrow was out visiting a friend. She didn't come home. Sans paused. The friend was a widow who lived in the next house. Her name was Lucille Landers. Her statement was that Mildred had left her house before 11 o'clock, ostensibly to go home. Dr. Morrow was at the hospital on a confinement case, and when he returned at 1 o'clock, Mildred Morrow still hadn't come home. He called his sister Edith, who was in bed, and they went over to Miss Landers' house. The three of them looked over around the park for an hour or so, and then called for the police. About 6 o'clock the next morning, we found Mildred Morrow lying against a tree with her head split open. Her purse and some valuable jewels were missing. The weapon wasn't found, but we were pretty sure it was an axe. There was a heavy snowfall during the night. The body was almost completely covered, and while there was indentations in the snow where foot tracks had been, they were useless to us. Who had the case? Vestman said. Inspector Hannigan. I was a patrolman at the time, and I rode a motorcycle. Oh, for Christ's sakes, Vestman said. A motorcycle? Dan smiled quietly. Sure, Hannigan figured the case was simple robbery, and he had a great time hauling in all the boys who'd ever stolen a balloon from the dime store. As a favor, he'd let me fool around with the case from another angle. I got nowhere. There seemed to be no motive for the crime except robbery. I talked to the family and Miss Landers, but I had no official standing. Then Hannigan got tired of the case and closed it after a few weeks. What was your verdict? I had none. Dr. Morrow had an alibi. Her sister Edith puzzled me. She's one of these rather unstable people, and I had an idea that she was jealously fond of her brother and probably preferred him without a wife. Miss Landers was a quiet, restrained woman, quite plain-looking, not as pretty as she is now, if her photographs don't lie. She was Mildred Morrow's best friend, and here again there was no motive for the vaguely possible one that she wanted Mildred's husband. And got it. Yes, but it's not unusual for a man to marry his wife's best friend. It's happening all the time, especially in cases like this, when the man is profoundly in love with his wife. Morrow was crazy about Mildred. He was very sick for a long time after she was killed. And Lucille nursed him, I suppose, Escone said with a cynical smile. I don't know, Sam said, but it was the children who worried me most. I don't know much about the children, and I found their reactions very queer. The girl was about 10 or 11 at the time. She acted as though nothing had happened, and whenever I asked her a question, she'd stare at me and pretend she hadn't heard. The boy was a couple of years older, going to Upper Canada College at the time. He acted wild and crazy. He laughed a great deal and offered to fight me. He said he'd take me on with one hand tied behind his back, provided I promised to keep clear of his spine, which he had broken once in a football game. What happened to him? He's now a literary editor of the Review. My God! The only one of the family I've seen since is the girl, Polly. I came across her 3 years ago in court. She was testifying in some charity case. She recognized me and turned her head away. Funny she remembered you. Yes, funny. Her father didn't when I phoned. Anyway, Hannigan closed the investigation and I was called off. Now I think it's opening again. He looked across at Vescombe. Don't you? Yeah, Vescombe said. Miss Flack emerged from the small cubicle where she'd been gilding the lily. It surely is nice of you to offer to drive me home, she said. To tell the honest truth, I was scared to death when you said you were a policeman. Now I'm not a bit scared. Good for you, Sam said. Miss Black was deposited at her apartment. What now? Vescombe said. We look around. I think somebody told me once that Toronto was 15 miles east and west and 9 miles north and south. Is that a fact? Stan said. What I want to know is who's holding the baby, you or me. We're sharing it until it's old enough to chew. The car shot ahead almost as if it knew what direction to take, like a well-trained horse. I want to get to Mrs. Marles first. Mr. Greeley and his lady friend were at a diamond dance hall out on the pier. Neither of them felt at home. The place was too classy. Greeley was ashamed to take off his overcoat and show his old suit. By the end of the second dance, the sweat was pouring down his neck and the effects of the champagne were wearing off. Greeley needed something stronger than champagne. Let's get the hell out of here. What for? The woman said. I'm having a swell time. Hell, if it's rear bumping you want, you can get it in a streetcar and cheaper. We just get someplace and then you want to go. I got a date anyway, come on. He walked out, not even looking around to see if she followed. When they were outside, she said, You got no manners, Eddie. She buttoned her coat. The lake slapped at the pier with cold, sententious hate. Jesus, Eddie, let's go home. Quit crabbing. I don't like it here. Well, for Christ's sakes, wait a minute. He pushed aside the flap of his overcoat and stabbed something into his thigh through his clothes. His thigh felt sore, but his mind began to see things right again. He had the right perspective now. Life was a stinker, but he, Greeley, had it licked. Me, Greeley. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when Sands called up again. Andrew hadn't gone to bed. He was sitting in his den with a book in his lap. Yes, he said into the phone. Dr. Morrow, Inspector Sands, could you get dressed? I am dressed. What's happened? I'm at the Lake Fouve Hotel. It's on Bleecher Street, right off the boulevard, west of Sunnyside. Your wife is here. Yes. It was as if something split inside his head, and he had to talk above the terrible roaring. She's all right? She's alive, Sands said. She's sick, then. You say she's sick. Edith appeared at the door of the den, wrapped in an old plaid bathrobe. What is it, Andrew? Tell me this instant. What is the matter? I'm coming right away, Andrew said, and laid down the phone. I'm going with you, Edith said. Whatever it is, I'm going with you. You can't face it alone. Andrew looked at her, but he couldn't see her properly. She was just a blur of colors, a whirling chart of colors without form or meaning or substance. He didn't even feel his own hand pushing her aside, and though his legs moved, his feet didn't seem to touch the floor. His eyes functioned, but only if he looked at one thing at a time, one separate stationary thing, the door, the instrument bag packed and ready in the front seat of the car, a street lamp, a house, a tree. She sat upright in a chair. Beside her, the steam radiator was turned on and gave off blasts of noise and heat that smelled of paint. Her face remained cold and waxy and her eyes frozen. Miss Morrow, there's a man in the room. Is it my room? No. Yes, my room. One man and another man. 2 men. I phoned your husband. He's coming right away. What a lot of men in my room. So much talk. If there's anything I can get you, they may be talking to me. Bascom shifted uneasily. I don't think she hears you. But I do. You're making a mistake, young man. Young man? Old man? 2, anyway. 2. Miss Morrow, I'd like to help you if you can remember what's happened to you. An expression moved across her face softly, like a cat walking. She knew she must be clever now. These were her enemies. She was in the lake. She was swimming. The water was cold and dark, and the waves passionate against her, and so strong. She saw a hand stretched out to help her. She reached for the hand, and it pushed her savagely away. Down, so black, so dying. Miss Morrow, here is your husband. Lucille, darling. He came into the sweltering room. She turned her head very slowly and saw him hold out his hand to her. She began to scream. The scream came out of her throat smoothly, almost effortlessly, like a song from the bird. When the ambulance came, she was still screaming. The ambulance neglected to pick up Mr. Greeley. The headlights just missed him. He was sitting in the alley behind the hotel, propped up against the wall. The wind from the lake stabbed at his face, but Greeley didn't mind it. Life was a stinker, but he, Greeley, had it licked. The night was dark, but full of bright dreams, warm women, silk, thick soft fur, velvet hills, and soft smug places. Dreaming, he passed into sleep, and sleeping into death. She felt safe again. Behind her there was an iron gate and 100 doors that locked with a big key. One of the nurses kept the key in the palm of her hand all the time. There were no steps, only inclines that you walked up with someone beside you, talking pleasantly and impersonally, and then finally the last door, the last kink of a key, and the enemy was shut out. The room had windows, but no one could get in through them. On both sides, there were steel mesh. She went immediately to the windows and felt the mesh, knowing that the nurse was watching her and reported it to the superintendent. But she had to know the room was safe, and the feel of the mesh under her fingers was reassuring. Strong, isn't it? She said. Oh, yes, the nurse said cheerfully. She was young with blonde curls and a pretty smile. She looked trim and efficient, but her eyes seemed to be laughing as though they lived a secret giddy life of their own. I'm Miss Scott. Miss Scott, Lucille repeated. We'll just unpack your clothes now and put them away, Miss Morrow. Miss Morrow. You sharing this room with Miss Cora Green. Miss Green is down in the library at the moment. I'm sure you'll like her very much. We all do. She began to unpack Lucille's clothes, keeping the key flat in the palm of her left hand. She did not turn her back to Lucille or take her eyes off her, but her vigilance was unobtrusive. She talked pleasantly and steadily. When Lucille finally noticed how closely she was being watched, she did not resent it. Miss Scott was so smooth. She gave the impression that she was being merely careful, not suspicious, cautious, but not in the least mistrustful. What a pretty blue dress, Miss Scott said. Almost matches your eyes, doesn't it? I think we'll save that one for the movie night. I didn't know I was to share a room. I find it better to have two people in the room. It's not so lonely, and you'll love Miss Green. She makes us all laugh. I wanted to be by myself. Of course, you may feel like that at first. Would you mind handing me another hanger, Miss Morrow? Lucille moved automatically. The mere act of hanging up one of her own dresses made her feel more at home. She picked up another hanger. Miss Scott observed her. Perhaps you'd like to finish up by yourself, Miss Morrow. Then you'll know where everything is. All right. We'll let everyone help herself as much as possible. I like to feel that each suite is a little community. I don't want to see others. The others, the crazy ones. I want to be by myself. You'll feel a little strange at first, but we'll find our system is the best. It was Lucille's first contact with the dominant we. We, the nurses, we, the doctors, the brass keys, the steel mesh, we, the iron gate, the fence, we, the people, society, we, the world. There are 4 rooms to each suite, Miss Scott said. 2 to a room. We try to put people of similar background together. From somewhere outside the door, a woman began to moan. Give me more food, more clothing. Her voice was weak but distinct. That's Miss Hammond, Miss Scott said briskly. Don't pay any attention to her. She has plenty to eat and to wear. Give me more food and more clothing. That's all she ever says, Scott added. Give me... Lucille bent over the suitcase, as if her body had flowed suddenly out of her dress, and the dress itself was ready to fold itself up to the suitcase and go home. Do you feel ill, Miss Morrow? There was a blur in front of her eyes, and beyond the blur words dangled and danced, and beyond the thickness that closed her ears, voices spoke, out of turn, out of time. Give me more food. People of similar background. Miss Morrow, here's your husband. More clothing. What a pretty blue dress. Do you feel ill, Miss Morrow? Do you feel ill? Ill? No, she said. Just a little upset, eh? Scott said. We expect that. I'd actually like me to leave you alone for a minute or two until you get used to the room. I'll go down to the library and get Miss Green. Here you'll find this blue chair very comfortable. Are you going to lock my door? I want my door locked. We never lock individual doors during the day. I want my door... Tonight, when you're all tucked in, we'll lock your door. Scott reached the door without exactly walking backward, but without turning her back to Lucille. She hooked the door open and stepped into the hall. Miss Hammond was standing just outside, her arms folded across her flat chest. She was a handsome young woman with thick black hair and somber brown eyes, but her skin was yellowish and stretched taut over the bones of her face. She wore a black skirt and a heavy red sweater. Give me more food and more clothing. A little quieter, please, Miss Hammond, Miss Scott said. We have a new guest today. Tell Miss Parsons to give you an apple. Parsons herself appeared in the corridor. She was younger than Miss Scott and less sure of herself. Well, she already had 2 apples and a banana, Miss Scott. Goodness, Scott said. You don't want to get a pain in your tummy, Miss Hammond. Give me more food. I could give her a milkshake, Miss Parsons said nervously. There, Miss Scott said cheerfully. If you're good and behave yourself, Miss Parsons will give you a milkshake. You go back to your room, Miss Hammond. Our period isn't over yet. Majestically, Miss Hammond went down the corridor and disappeared into her room. Where did she put it? Miss Parsons said in a warning voice. Where did she put it? Go down for Miss Cora. She's in the library. She lowered her voice. I don't think Miss Marlowe is going to be any trouble at all, except that Dr. Goodrich wants everything she says put on her chart. Miss Parsons looked desperate. Everything? It's all right. She didn't say much. Here's the key to get Miss Cora. Miss Scott returned to her desk. It was in the center of the short corridor, and from it she had a view of the open door of each room and the locked door that led to the incline. She looked at her watch. 2:40. That left her 20 minutes to introduce Miss Cora to her new roommate, get the ward ready for their walk, and persuade Miss Marlowe to leave her room peacefully and see Dr. Goodrich in his office. She sighed, but it wasn't from weariness. It was the contented sigh of someone who had 100 things to do and knows she could do more. The inclined door opened, and Miss Parsons came in with Miss Cora Green. Miss Green was a small, sprightly woman in her 60s. Her black silk dress was immaculately clean and pressed, and her white hair was combed in hundreds of tiny pin curls with a pink velvet bow perched on top. She moved quickly and delicately as a bird. Is she here? Miss Cora said. Is who here? Scott said, quite severely. He had to be severe with Miss Cora in order not to laugh. Miss Cora was so sharp, she knew almost as much about the patients as Dr. Goodrich, and she was continually trying to wheedle more information from the nurses. You always see me in the library when I'm getting someone new in my room, Miss Cora said. What's the matter with her? What's her name? Miss Morrow, Miss Scott said. Come along and make a good impression. Well, the least you could do is tell me what's the matter with her. Miss Parsons and Miss Scott exchanged faint smiles. I don't know, Miss Scott said. Well, the least you could do is tell me how bad she is. Is she as bad as Mrs. Hammond? No. Thank heaven, I find Miss Hammond a dull woman. If I were the superintendent, I'd feed her and feed her and feed her and just see what happens. Wonder how much she could really eat. Miss Scott, who had wondered the same thing herself, was pleasantly blank. She took Miss Cora's arm, and they went together into the room. Here's Miss Green, Mrs. Morrow. Miss Green? Lucille looked up. Fear that had sprung in her eyes slid away slowly. Miss Green? A tiny old woman, no threat, no danger. How do you do, Miss Green? How do you do, Miss Morrow? Miss Cora said. What perfectly beautiful hair you have. She glanced back at Miss Scott with a sly smile that said, That's the kind of thing you say, but you're not fooling me. Miss Scott pretended not to notice. It's so lovely, isn't it? Such a pretty color. I'm sure you and Miss Green will get along splendidly, Miss Morrow. I'll be right out in the corridor if you want me for anything. Do you remember my name? Miss Scott, Lucille said. That's fine, Miss Scott said, sounding very, very pleased. He went out. She says a lot of silly things, Miss Cora said. They're trained to say silly things. Are they? Lucille said. They underestimate her intelligence, especially mine. Studied Lucille for a minute and added pensively. Perhaps yours too. Is there anything special the matter with you? I don't know. She had felt cold and detached before, but now she had a sudden wild desire to talk, to explain herself to Miss Green. There's nothing the matter with me. I'm afraid, but it's a real fear. I didn't imagine it. I'm afraid I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be killed by one of them. Andrew, Polly, Martin, Edith, Giles, one of them. She whispered, I came here to be saved. Are people after you? Yes. Oh dear, they all say that, Miss Cora said, disappointed. You mustn't tell that to Dr. Goodrich. We'll simply never get out of here. They have such suspicious minds around this place. Scott stuck her head in the door. Get your coat on, Cora. Time for a walk. I'm not going for a walk today, Cora stated firmly. Come on, that's a good girl. No, my neuritis is bothering me this afternoon. You haven't been outside for a week, Miss Scott said. While it wasn't impossible for Miss Cora to prove she had neuritis, it was equally impossible for anyone to disprove it. Miss Cora's neuritis was hard to pin down. It skipped agilely from limb to limb. It settled in the legs if a walk was necessary. In the arms of Miss Cora, it didn't feel like doing occupational therapy, and in the head under any provocation. There was also, Miss Cora pointed out, my weak heart. Nonsense, Scott said brusquely. Gentle exercise is good for heart patients. Not for me. Miss Scott retreated without further argument. The walks are very boring, Cora explained to Lucille. They do very naive things like gather leaves. The level of sophistication in this place is very low. Miss Scott appeared again, a navy blue cape flung over her uniform. Goodbye, Cora. You'll be sorry you didn't come. We're going to build a lovely snowman. Isn't she absurd? Miss Cora cried, shaking her head. A lovely snowman? Really? Miss Hammond strode past the door, muffled in an immense fur coat, with a woolen scarf tied around her head. Behind her came two stout middle-aged women who looked and were dressed exactly alike. They walked arm in arm and in step. The Filsinger twins, Cora said, without bothering to lower her voice. I can't tell which is which anymore. A while ago you could tell which was Mary because she was crazier. Now Betty's as bad as she is. Miss Cora waved her hand at them, and the twins disappeared, scowling. Mary was in here first, Miss Cora explained. Betty used to come in to see her, and she was all right till a few months ago when she began to copy Mary's symptoms. Now they're both here. Mary looks after Betty. She even gives her baths. Miss Cora sighed. It's all very Freudian. I have a sister myself, but the mere thought of giving her a bath is abhorrent to me. She's quite stout and rather hairy. She paused, looking down at her own white, delicate hands. Her movements were a little brusque, and her talking a little too fast for a woman of her age. But Lucille felt that here, of all the people she had known, was the one who would entirely think. I know what you're thinking, Cora said, and of course you're quite right. I am far too sensible to cope with a nonsensical world. I'd rather stay here, she laughed. I in my small corner, and you in yours. Somewhere in the building, a gong began to ring. In a sudden panic, Lucille started out of the chair, but even before she was on her feet, the gong had stopped again. That's Mary Filsinger, Cora said wryly. Every time she goes out for a walk, she runs to the fence and touches it to see if the escape alarm is still working. She never misses. Why? Phil said. Why? No one ever asks why at Penwood. Too fiddle. Concentrate instead on the beautiful consistency and order of things. Mary Filsinger in the fence, Miss Hammond in her solitary sentence. There's a pattern of divine illogic about it, and the pattern doesn't change. It's what I miss in the real world, some kind of pattern that doesn't change. The fence, Lucille said. If someone tried to get in here, the alarm would ring. To get in? Cora's voice was sharp with disappointment. She had wanted to go on talking about patterns. She had felt that she had at last acquired a roommate capable of appreciating her, a woman like herself, who could observe life but utterly bewildered in the living of it. Who on earth wants to get into Penwood? The more common desire is to get out. I want to stay here, Lucille whispered. Hush, Cora jerked her head around toward the open door. Miss Scott will be coming back in a minute. Don't let her hear you. Why do you want to stay here? I don't know. I'm afraid. She felt the words pressing on her throat like bubbles ready to break. If I told someone I could get help, someone might help me. Help me, Cora. Then she saw Cora's eyes, bright with wild, unreasonable excitement. She shrank back in her chair, pressing her fists against her breast. Say anything, Cora said. If you want to stay here, don't tell Dr. Goodrich anything. Don't answer him at all, not a word. Even one word might give you away. Give me away? You don't belong here, but if you want to stay, that's your business. Don't tell Goodrich anything. Good afternoon, Miss Morrow. Don't answer him at all. I hope you're settled comfortably in your room. Sit down here, please. You may go, Miss Scott. Silence. Eyes. Surely he had more than two eyes. Please sit down, Miss Morrow. If I sit down, would that be giving myself away? That's better. That's fine. Perhaps you'd like a cigarette. I'm sorry we can't allow smoking in the rooms. You can understand why. Of course, we're children. You can't treat us with fire. You can't trust us with fire. Can't you? What is he holding out to me? Cigarette? No, a pen. Why a pen? I have a few routine questions to ask you. If you'll take the pen and sign your name right here. What is your full name, please? What date is this, anyway? September 9th. I don't tell you. You can't catch me. Your full name? Can't catch me. What year were you born? Do you know where you are? When you see this? When you hear this? What color is your dress? The questions continued. Lucille said nothing. Dr. Goodrich was entirely unperturbed at her silence. He seemed intent on what he was writing and barely looked at her anymore. She felt secure in her silence, suddenly triumphant. It was easy, after all. It was the easiest thing in the world to fool. Almost boldly, she glanced across the desk to see what he was writing. She saw with a shock that he wasn't writing anything. He was drawing pictures. and he'd been waiting for her to find it out, deliberately. In that instant, he looked up, and their eyes met. His were kindly but a little cynical. "Not putting anything over on me," they said. "All right, Miss Morrow," he said pleasantly. "We don't want to overdo things the first day. Miss Scott will show you back to your room." Through a haze, he saw Miss Scott gliding across the room toward him. She put out her hands blindly to clutch at something safe. Miss Scott caught her as she fell. "He's fainted," Miss Scott said in a surprised voice. "Put her on the couch and get a stretcher. Don't send her to the dining room tonight for dinner unless she has to go. And send Miss Green down here, please." 15 minutes later, Cora arrived, flanked by a blushing Miss Parsons. "Why on earth you have to have her bring me is more than I can say," Cora said. "I know my way around this place better than she does, and it isn't as if I'd try to escape." Parsons made a hurried exit. Cora bounced across the room towards Dr. Goodrich. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Cora," Goodrich said with a faint smile. Cora sat down. She was breathing heavily, and her lips had a bluish tinge that Goodrich noted with concern. "How do you feel, Cora?" "Fine. You should learn to move more slowly." "I've never been cautious," Cora said with a toss of her head. "It's too late to learn now. Tomorrow's visitor day. Your sister's coming. I thought it'd be a good idea for you to be all packed, ready to go home with her." She stared at him. "Did you tell Janet?" "She suggested it herself. You haven't been home for quite a while." "I don't want to go. I'm too old to be shunted back and forth like this all the time. You may come back whenever you feel like it. You're much better than you were." "You know that's a lie, Doctor," Cora said. "Why do you want me to go home? Because I'm not going to last much longer. Is that it?" "Nonsense. Your sister thought you might like to come. It's up to you. If you'd rather stay here, well, you know we'd like to have you." It was true. Miss Green was a favorite of the hospital. It was difficult to imagine this bright, cheerful little woman getting wildly drunk whenever the opportunity presented itself. On these rare occasions, her moral barriers were all swept away. Twice she had been arrested for stealing, and several times for disorderly conduct. Usually she remembered nothing of what she had done. After the second offense, her sister Janet had sent her to Penwood, and from here she made periodic visits home. But they were not successful. Under the vigilant and worried eye of her sister, Cora felt far more irresponsible and restless than she did at Penwood. After a few days of this constant watching, Cora felt impelled to escape from it. She had the subtle running of the superior drunkard, and Janet, an unimaginative and successful businesswoman, no match for her. Cora always managed to get out, to get money, to get drunk. Her heart made these excursions increasingly dangerous. "You know what would happen," Cora said. "You know very well I'm not cured." Goodrich, who knew it very well, said nothing. "How many of us ever are?" he demanded. "Not many. I used to think that once I knew why I drank I could stop, just like that," snapped her fingers. "But nothing is so simple as it seems. I know, and you know, why I drink." He let her talk, though he knew her history in every detail. She'd been 15 when both her parents died, leaving her with a 5-year-old sister to look after. For 25 years she had done her job thoroughly and unselfishly. As Janet began to succeed in business, Cora began to go downhill. Her memory often failed her, and she became almost scatterbrained in dealing with situations and people. She was throwing off the weight of an irresponsibility that had been too heavy for her. Now, though the weight was gone, the mind remembered guiltily the feeling and contours of it. "Responsibility is still there," Cora said. "It will be there until I die. Oh Lord, I'm getting heavy, aren't I? I don't like heavy people." She rose, pulling herself up, lay clinging to the arms of the chair. Goodrich noticed. "Better drop in on Dr. Laverne for a checkup tomorrow, Cora." "I don't need a checkup. I feel fine." "I'll arrange it." "All this silly fussing," Cora said. "It'd hardly be a tragedy for an old woman of 60 to die." "Don't cheat, Cora. 66. She turned away, laughing. "All the less of a tragedy." Cora Green died 2 days later. During the week, the Morrow family visited Lucille. A small boy called McGuire found a parcel washed up on the beach and took it home to his mother. And on the same day, an inquest was held on the body of Eddie Greer. And it looks like with that, we shall end at chapter 7. 2 deaths. And a sanitarium. So, I guess we shall see. It's been fun having you all. I hope you enjoyed my story. And hopefully you will come back for part 4, where we will pick up from where we left off. And we will find a different spot here at our favorite feline. Or our feline friends, sorry. Our feline friends. I fucked that up. Wait. Oh. Oh, no, she's fine. She knows. Okay. Yeah, stop by. Fish for a fish. She was talking about prizes and stuff, so, look forward to that. And look forward to this. Again, by all means, like, comment, subscribe. Good night.
Next up, a tale that will haunt your dreams.